My hands were still dirty from pruning roses when I saw them 2 suitcases sitting bold on my welcome mat. My son looked away, and my daughter-in-law smiled as if she owned the porch. Inside my chest, the ache was sharp, but my voice stayed steady. I kept the storm door locked and asked, "Why are you here?" When Brendan finally spoke, it was worse than silence they had sold. The house handed her $850,000 and now expected mine. I didn't shout. I just let the latch hold, knowing the real fight had only begun. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I was trimming the last roses when the car door slammed hard enough to nick the afternoon calm. October light lay thin across my lawn, catching the dust on my pruning shears and soil under my fingernails. From the street, I heard the distant thrum of the Metra heading toward Chicago, a sound I've used as a clock since before Brendan could drive. I paused with a stem between my fingers and let the air settle. At 66, you learn to read weather in people, the way you read it in clouds. Something was moving in, and it wasn't rain. Wind shifted. When I looked up, 2 hard-sided suitcases sat square on my welcome mat, their wheels resting on the word home, like feet on a throat. Brendan stood behind them in his work slacks, tie-skewed hair damp as if he'd tugged his hands through it in the car. Darlie's eyes swept my porch, the way a realtor surveys a listing door trim, wicker chair, the ceramic bowl where I keep spare keys for neighbors. She smiled at the doorbell as its blue LED blinked. I kept the storm door latched and the inner door closed, my hand still around the shears. The mat sagged under their weight. Nothing in me moved. No. I stepped close enough for them to see my face behind the glass. I have hosted wakes and newborns and Sunday dinners, but hosting is not surrendering a house. Porches mark thresholds. They tell you where you are welcome and where you ask. I set the shears on the railing, wiped my hands on the apron, and felt them steady. Brendan's mouth softened like it did when he was a boy missing his glove. I loved boy in that memory, not this moment. My voice was level measured as a ledger, gentle as a hymn. Brendan cleared his throat. "Ma," he said, aiming for casual and missing. We sold the house. The words landed with the scrape of boxes in a truck. Maple Street flashed up peeling shutters I helped paint the sapling we planted, and the cashier's check for $40,000 I handed him the day they closed. Not a gift, not exactly. A stake to keep them near to give future children a yard. He didn't meet my eyes. Darlie tapped a nail on the handle. It was the right time, Velma, she said. "Market's hot. We did it fast. A bee nosed a rose." "And you came here because," I asked. "Because Family Brendan said the word didn't know where to sit." Darlie angled her chin toward the camera lens as if on stage. $850,000, she said. "We didn't need permission." The number hung like a chandelier I'd never choose. Manners held my spine firm. "Congratulations," I said. "Escrow closed yesterday," she said. "A friend made an LLC, so it cleared clean. Taxes are a nightmare." She smoothed a sleeve that didn't need smoothing. Brendan studied the porch boards as if answers were written in the knots. I thought of the $40,000 I put in and how quickly belonging gets edited out of a sentence. And now I asked, "Now what?" "Ok." I didn't open the door. The brass latch sat in its groove like a small decision made long ago. Through the glass, my words reached them plain. "You can talk to me right here," I said. Darlie widened her smile to show how little that bothered her. She lifted a suitcase an inch and let it drop so the wheels thumped the mat. I kept my hand resting on the cool frame and counted a breath, then another. No apology came by instinct, which told me plenty. "Where did the $850 go?" I asked, like a recipe question. Darlie brightened. "We paid off some things," she said, "and I finally did the upgrades. Quartz new pulls, canned lights." She touched her earlobe. The stud flashed. "We took a spa weekend. My friend knows a jeweler. I traded up my ring. We invested to same friend." Brendan nodded twice. I kept my tone even. "Any left for now," she said. We'll be fine. We just need a place a while. I filed Quartz canned lights, ring, spa friend each in tidy folder. Her voice had a shine money buys faster than grace. He looked on. Paper solves what talk refuses. Years ago, when I wrote that promissory note for the $40,000, I made 2 copies. One lives with my lawyer. Maple Street's deed lives at the county recorder in Wheaton, and I know the clerk by name. I keep folders in a cedar box, neat as hymnals slow. I did not move toward the house or the box. Seeds need time and dark. So do plants. I breathed. The file sits. You're our mother, Brendan said, as if the word were a master key. Darlie lifted her chin. Let us in. They leaned in. Latch hummed without moving. Wind worked the maple leaves and made a dry whisper over the porch. I slid the shears into my apron pocket and brushed a fallen petal off the mat with my shoe so it wouldn't be crushed. The latch gave a small squeak and settled again like a hinge remembering its job. I thought of the cedar box of Wheaton and the boy who once asked if I'd seen him. I decided what my next words would be and where I would say them. I kept the latch in place and let the silence do the talking one heartbeat longer. I didn't raise my voice. I leaned toward the storm door and let the word land where their hands already were no. Darlie's palm paused on the handle as if the latch might hear a second opinion. The red ring on the doorbell camera pulsed, catching the tremor in her jaw. Brendan stood half a step behind her tie, loose eyes somewhere near his shoes. Between them and me lay the welcome mat, and on it 2 suitcases I hadn't invited. I tapped the little no trespass placard fixed under the peephole, then met my son's eyes. This isn't a debate through a door, I said steady. Step back from the line, please. Velma Darlie sang my first name like a warning we're family. We just need a place for a while. Her knuckles whitened around the handle. The latch held. You can't mean that. I mean exactly that. I let the syllables be plain. The door stays closed today. Brendan tried for diplomacy. Mom, maybe we can talk inside just to explain. You can talk from the porch. He answered, not unkindly. I host. I don't surrender the house. That's the rule. Darlie's smile thinned. Do you know how this looks? A mother shutting out her own son? I know how it feels, I said. And I know what I contributed when you bought Maple Street. I didn't give them the number, not yet. Ground rules, once no move-in, no key copies, and no sleeping on this porch. If you need short-term shelter, I can print a list. Print a list? She laughed without humor. We sold our home. $850,000. We don't need your lists. You sold a home that had other obligations, I said, because truth belongs early. This door isn't where you'll solve that. Brendan shifted toe, nudging the suitcase wheel. We're not here to fight. Good. Then you'll take your bags and make a plan that doesn't use my address. Her voice went syrupy, then sharp. People will hear about this, Velma. The ladies at church, the neighbors. I'll make sure they know how you treat us. If you want an audience, I said be careful which room you choose. The camera light blinked once more as she tugged the handle a final time. The latch didn't budge. Brendan lifted both suitcases, and they retreated down the steps toward the SUV. He didn't look back. When the driveway quieted, I did what mothers do when the house is finally still. I cleaned up the moment. I saved the doorbell clip to the cloud, added the timestamp, and named the folder plainly Front Porch Day 1. The act steadied me more than tea would have. At my desk, I breathed before I typed. DuPage County Recorder, Public Index. The screen loaded with the familiar search fields, and I entered what mattered: last name, street year. There it was, the instrument chain on the Maple Street parcel, my promissory note recorded after closing the secured interest that made my $40,000 more than a memory. I clicked through to the abstract, wrote down the instrument number, and printed the index page. The printer hummed like a quiet witness. Next, I opened my file drawer and retrieved the note I'd insisted be notarized 3 years ago. I reread the clause I could recite by heart repayment schedule commencing 12 months after purchase. Lien to be satisfied upon sale. Yellow, sticky flags went on the signature lines and on the lien paragraph. I added a prior mortgage release for context. 3 pages, 3 truths each, with my name where it belonged. I slid everything into a thin black binder and labeled the spine with a silver pen, Cole Note Leanne, Exhibits AC. It wasn't anger that warmed my hands, it was competence. I've been many things in my life, wife, caretaker, book club, treasurer, but that afternoon I let myself be the archivist of my own dignity. Email next, subject line, lien unpaid after sale. I attached the PDFs, pasted the recorder index link, and dropped in the cloud URL to the doorbell video. In the body, I kept it clean. Dates, amounts, a short timeline from down payment to today's visit. No adjectives. I asked my attorney to advise on next civil steps and whether notice should go first to Brendan or to the title company. I did not ask how to make anyone feel sorry. I asked how to put what's true in the right place. Before I hit send, I stared through the blinds to the maple tree that has shaded this house longer than any of us have lived in it. A train horn carried from the commuter line, thin and honest. I clicked. I set 2 reminders on my phone, recorder, clerk, follow-up service options. Then I put the binder on the corner of my desk where the late son could find it. If Darlie wanted a crowd, I would oblige her, but not on a porch and not with gossip. Some rooms come with microphones and file stamps and an oath to tell the truth. I made a pot of chili for one because body and mind both need feeding on days like this. When the spoon clinked against the bowl, the house sounded like it always has, small, sturdy enough. I rinsed the dishes, locked the deadbolt again out of habit, and checked that the camera was still recording its quiet red pulse. I printed the shelter list and slid it under a magnet by the kitchen phone. For late grief, tried to sit at the table with me, but I left it by the window. I am a mother. That doesn't make me a doormat. It makes me a caretaker of lines where they begin, where they hold, where they are signed. If she wants an audience, she can have one with a case number attached. She was already live when the courier walked up the path envelope held high. I could see the tiny lens on her phone tilted just so, catching my porch and half the maple tree because performance needs scenery. He stopped below the steps and asked, "Are you Darlie Quinn?" His voice carried steady as a ruler. Brendan hovered behind her shoulder, smaller than I remembered, as if the camera had shaved him down. I stayed behind the storm door. So, I didn't adjust my hair or my breathing. My doorbell cam's LED glowed its cool, blue, patient recording. Wind seamed the audio on her stream. I could hear it through the glass and through the phone she held too close to her face. "Ma'am," the courier said, raising the envelope so the stamp could catch the light, "you've been served." He set it gently on the top step, like a plate you don't want to spill. The embossed seal flashed. Even through glass, I could see the relief of the county crest. Darlie held the phone toward it, narrating into her followers like a tour guide at a ruin. "This is harassment," she told the air. "My mother-in-law is trying to ruin us." She used the words like props. She swung the frame to me, but I didn't gift her a line. I simply lifted one finger and pointed to the seal the way a museum docent points to provenance. Brendan reached as if to take the papers. The courier shook his head. "Recipient only," and Darlie made a show of plucking the envelope as though it might stain her. She kept streaming. She kept talking. The camera caught the file stamp. The chat slowed, then tilted. Even an audience knows the difference between glitter and a ledger. I won't debate into a phone. I said not to her viewers, but to the man who'd done his job. "Thank you. Case number." He read it aloud. I repeated it for my memory the way you repeat a verse in church until the meaning steadies under the words. Across the street, Martha Keating paused by her mailbox. "You all right, Velma?" She called visor brim bright as a saucer. Her voice cut the summering air of an October day that hadn't yet decided to be cold. I lifted my hand. "I'm fine," I said, and meant it more than I expected. Darlie turned the live back to herself, trying to harvest sympathy. The wind punched the mic again. Brendan angled away, avoiding the lens, avoiding me. They walked down the path, the stream still running, as if a moving picture could drag truth after it like a kite tail. In my chest, something quiet settled into place. Not triumph, not yet. Verification. When the SUV door thudded, I let my hand drop from the latch. The house felt the way a good shoe feels when you retie it held. I went to my desk and woke the monitor. Front porch, day 2. The cloud folder read, waiting for the day's appetite. I pulled the doorbell file, front porch, D2:58am.mp4, and watched the blue ring blink in the corner while the courier climbed the path. Pause, clip, save. The smart lock logs showed exactly what I wanted them to show. Nobody had crossed my threshold. It's funny how a line of timestamps can feel like a spine. I exported the lock events to CSV, checked the UTC offsets against local time, and wrote the conversions in the margin. I took 3 still frames, her hand hovering near the handle, the envelope on the step, the courier's badge. Beneath each, I typed the time to the second. It wasn't art, but it was composition. On one page, I arranged the stills in a strip left to right, simple as a children's book. At the bottom, I added the case number, the street, the weather summary the camera provides. A binder waited on the shelf with its spine already labeled Timeline, Day 2. When you've been erased enough times, you learn to write with a thicker pen. I uploaded the packet to the secure folder my attorney prefers and drafted an email. Subject service completed, evidence attached, body a brief cool paragraph, doorbell video, smart lock, CSV stills, neighbor present. No entry attempted subpoena accepted on camera at 10:59 a.m. I included the link and the case number. I did not include adjectives. Outside, the SUV idled, then pulled away. Through the glass, I saw Brendan's profile soften and harden in a single second, like clay that can't decide. Darlie stared into her own reflection in the phone as if it could absolve her. The stream ended. The world on my porch remained. I pressed send. The printer kicked once more and gave me an index page for my Note the Instrument chain where my name appears, highlighted the way a lighthouse appears to a sailor who finally turns his head toward shore. On my calendar, I set a reminder for the recorder and the clerk for service follow-up for the courtesies that are not favors. I closed the binder and slid it home. Paper is slow, people say, as if slow is a flaw. Paper holds. If her story is a boutique, I murmured to the empty kitchen the state register is about to call it by its real name. I locked the back door, watered the fern, and put the kettle on. You would be amazed how much steadiness a cup can hold while the internet spins itself to sleep. I took from the drawer a small tin where I keep business cards, the county clerk, the recorder, the Secretary of State helpline. I set them in a neat row beside the teacup, a little parade of ordinary authority. Tomorrow, first thing I would run the search myself, then call if the results were coy. Names, numbers, dates, the trifecta that does not blink. Garrison slid a printout across his desk. No active license, no filing, just a pretty name floating in air. He had my binder open. The doorbell clip sat in his inbox like a witness waiting to be sworn. I received everything he said. Let's walk it in order. He turned his monitor toward me and signed into the county recorder. Instrument search. My last name, his cursor steady. Relief arrived the way autumn light does thin reel and not interested in applause. At 66, you learn that quiet saves energy for the moments that matter. There it was, the instrument number. He printed the page. My notarized signature, the clause I insisted on, secured by the property at Maple Street, and the square of ink recorded with the date and time. No triumph leapt up in me, only alignment. Paper remembers when people choose not to. He traced the chain of title with a yellow pen, warranty deed. First mortgage my note and lien, then the closing where the mortgage was paid off. His pen paused where my lien should have been satisfied. This gap, he said, and circled the blank. I looked at the circle and thought of the day they asked me to trust that love would fill it. Love is not a ledger entry. It does not erase signatures. As for the boutique, he said switching sites. We searched the state registry for the name Darlie had announced to everyone who would listen. Nothing. He tried variants, plural, hyphenated, reversed. The same verdict in plain sans serif, no record found. He didn't smile. He wrote the time, the URL, and no active record and underlined it once. He called a clerk he knew at the department. The speaker stayed off. I heard only his side short professional, then he read the confirmation back to me so I could write it down. No filings, no assumed name certificate. He noted the clerk's name and badge number. If she is taking payment under that banner, he said the state will be as curious as we are. We moved to the bank trail. He dictated a request list statements for Brendan's accounts for the months bracketing the sale. Any transfers referencing an LLC or boutique escrow disbursements, closing ledger wire confirms. I added dates from memory the weekend he borrowed my hedge trimmer, late June, when she posted a spa photo captioned "Finally investing in me" the day they mentioned countertops. The more precise the ask, the clearer the answer. In the hallway, while he copied my packet for service, I watched umbrellas slide along the sidewalk. Years ago, I wrote a $40,000 check with my name sharpened by fear and hope. I did not want them to drown if a pipe burst or a job went sideways. I asked for a promissory note and a lien because my mother taught me to count the silverware after a party and to trust, but verify. No one thanked me for the paperwork then. I am not asking for thanks now. Back home at the desk, I built a notice pack. A neutral summary, dates, instrument number, recorded stamp without adjectives. I listed parties who would need to be aware: the escrow company, the title insurer, the HOA board, and if counsel approved, the buyer's agent from the closing sheet. I attached PDFs of the index page and the first page of the note with my signature and saved the bundle as Notice Pack D Toot PDF. Naming things helps you remember who you are. My phone rang. Darlie's picture framed a smile from some rooftop brunch. Velma, can we hit pause? Just a temporary stay while we figure out living arrangements. You don't want this to look bad for you. Her tone feathered between honey and wire. Communicate through counsel, I said. It was not unkind. It was offense. I'm logging this call for the file. I wrote the time and ended it. She redialed once and hung up before voicemail. The house settled around me, patient as a choir before the hymn. A text from Martha, blinked HOA, added front yard disturbances to tomorrow's agenda meeting at 9 in the clubhouse. She would save me a chair near the aisle. I thanked her and set 2 reminders, one for the meeting, one for the clerk's letter we expected by noon. The late sun turned the maple outside my window the color of a worn penny. I opened my notebook and made a short list titled, Who Needs to Hear Facts? I don't aim to embarrass anyone. I aim to speak in complete sentences with a stamp at the end. Some people fear rooms with fluorescent lights because those rooms lack applause. I like them. They keep regular hours and they file things where other people can find them later. On the screen, my cursor hovered over send on an email to Garrison Packet compiled, awaiting your green light to distribute to notice recipients. Also, please advise on requests to the escrow and to Brendan's bank. I clicked. Tomorrow would be public, but it would not be theater. It would be minutes, an agenda, and a line for member comments. I would use my 3 minutes to say only what can be verified. Downstairs, the roses I trimmed 2 mornings ago waited in a jar by the sink. I rinsed the shears, dried them, and set them in their drawer. The house breathed. A train murmured beyond the trees. I thought of Brendan's text earlier, 3 words lowercase a son, trying to stand in 2 places at once will sort this. I hope so, I wrote in my head, but this time the sorting would follow a map. If she wants a crowd tomorrow, the neighborhood will finally hear the part that carries a stamp. I exhaled. The folding chairs were still cold when Janelle called the HOA to order. Morning sun came in at a slant through the clubhouse windows, lighting up dust like confetti that forgot its cue. I took a seat near the aisle so my knees wouldn't complain later. I'd brought a small folder, the kind that snaps shut, not to make a show of it, only to keep the papers square. I nodded to Martha across the room. She tipped her visor like we were on a front porch, not under fluorescent lights. Janelle read the agenda in a steady voice. Item 3, she said, tapping the list with a capped pen. Front yard disturbances at 114 Oakmere. The room did a little throat clear. Someone adjusted the coffee urn. The heater clicked and breathed. I signed the attendance sheet, wrote the time the way I always have since moving here 15 years ago. My hands were steady on the pen, my jaw too. When she opened the floor, I stood. 2 mornings, I said. keeping to the middle of the room, yesterday and the day before. My son and his wife arrived at my door with luggage asked to move in. I declined through a closed storm door. There was a live broadcast from my yard. A process server delivered a subpoena on camera. No threats from me, no shouting, no entry. I held up the snap folder. I have timestamps and the doorbell clips on a USB for any board member who wishes to review. Martha raised her hand next. I watched from my porch, she said. Velma didn't open that door. She stayed behind the glass. The younger woman kept filming. The street was blocked for a bit by their SUV. It wasn't a noise ordinance situation exactly, but it wasn't neighborly. 2 other residents added brief remarks about traffic and a stroller having to go around. The secretary read back their names to spell them right. The community manager stood and read an incident report he'd drafted from our notes. Dates, times, locations, and the phrase refusal of entry at private residence. He asked the board to adopt it into the record. A motion, a second. Hands went up. Motion carries, Janelle said. The manager stamped my copy received and passed it down the row. I didn't smile. I just tucked it into the folder behind the USB and breathed out like a kettle that found the right simmer. We reviewed policy the section on non-resident disturbances and the use of amenities by guests. Janelle pointed to the lines about warnings, written notices, and bans for repeated conduct. This wasn't the part anyone came to hear, but it was the part that matters. She asked if I needed a wellness check or additional patrols. No, I said. I need boundaries to be clear so there are no misunderstandings. A few heads nodded. The heater clicked again like punctuation. Then came the vote that would make the boundary visible. The board considered revoking any community gate or amenity guest codes attached to my address and issuing a do not admit list with the names provided. They discussed notice requirements, appeal rights, and the role of security if anyone attempted to argue the point at my door. The motion went to the floor. Hands rose clean and certain. Motion carries, Janelle said, writing the date. I wrote it too. During questions, a man in a ball cap asked what would happen if there was an emergency. Call 911, Janelle said. This is about routine access, not medical response. Another resident asked whether I intended to press charges. All communication goes through counsel, I said. I'm not here to debate my family. I'm here to keep my neighbors out of the crossfire. The words landed without drama, which is how I wanted them. After adjournment, the room loosened. Chairs scraped. The coffee ran low. I collected the stamped incident report, a copy of the agenda, and the vote tally. On the way out, I took a quick photo of the minutes board with the meeting number in case anyone later asked when a decision had been made. Martha touched my sleeve. You did fine, she said. Quiet is stronger than folks think. I squeezed her hand and let the door close soft behind us. At home by noon, I set the folder on my scanner and made clean PDFs, the report, the vote, the agenda. I attached the files to an email to Garrison with a clear subject line. I added links to the doorbell clips and wrote 3 sentences that said only what needed saying. I hit send, then uploaded the documents to the case folder because even tidy stories can misplace a page. The house hummed in the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's earned. I brewed tea and carried it to the porch. The welcome mat lay where it always has letters facing the street edges flat. The maple threw shade over the walk. A jogger's ponytail bobbed by, unaware of any of this. I set a reminder to update the security vendor about the HOA's access changes and added the incident number to my running log. A sparrow fussed in the hedge, then quieted. So did my chest. The phone buzzed near 2. The screen showed an unknown number, and the voicemail count jumped to 1. I listened once, then saved it sugar on top splinters beneath. Woman to woman, she said, as if that phrase were a key that opens any lock. I didn't call back. I wrote the time-pressed save and let the message sit in the same shelter as the rest of the record. I rinsed my cup and straightened the doormat. By afternoon, if she wanted a stage, she would find only a lobby and a camera. She arrived loud. I answered with a USB. The lobby at Keystone carries every sound the bell at the desk. The copier's exhale heals over tile. I stood beside the counter, shoulders down, voice even. I had already told Kira, our office manager, that a family matter might spill into the building. The ceiling camera blinked its tiny red dot above the ficus. Darlie swept in with her phone raised. Elder abuse, she announced to the room. A pair of clients looked up from intake forms. I kept my hands visible and my words clean. Good afternoon. If you have business here, the receptionist can help you. If this is about personal matters, we will direct you to the proper channel. Your channel is guilt, she said, panning the phone past my face. You locked us out of our home. This office is not a home, I said, still gentle, and all communications go through counsel. I tapped the labeled thumb drive on the counter. It held doorbell clips, the HOA report, and recorder printouts paper where performance wanted to be. Kira will log this for HR. Kira appeared from the side door, neutral cardigan, a small clipboard in hand. Let's move to the conference room, she said. We stepped into the glass box where voices become their own reflections. Building security stood in the hallway, present, not aggressive. I slid the second USB across the table. Identical copy, I told Kira. File under Haynes external contact. Darlie tried a different key. Velma, we can fix this if you stop with the theatrics. No discussion on premises, I said. Counsel only. The phrase felt like a railing I could hold while the floor pitched. Brendan hurried in a minute later, tie askew apology, sitting on his face without a home to land in. Mom, maybe we can step outside for 5 minutes. I don't discuss legal matters in hallways, I said. Sit, listen, or leave. Those are our choices. Kira opened a folder. Our workplace policy prohibits harassment and filming of staff or clients. We will address this as a policy matter, not a personal one. The conference room door clicked, and a courier stepped in. Flat envelope in his hand. Delivery for Ms. Darlie Quinn. He confirmed her name, then placed the document on the table where the lobby camera would catch the move as he left. The top page bore my attorney's letterhead. Cease and desist. Notice to preserve evidence. Kira date-stamped the copy for the file. Darlie's phone kept running, but the lens didn't change the ink. This is intimidation, Darlie said. This is procedure, Kira replied, with a patience only office managers possess. You're being asked to stop the behavior and to keep all related material. If you refuse to comply, security will escort you out, and we will issue a trespass notice. Brendan's eyes fell to his hands. Mine moved to the pen beside the legal pad and stayed there. Darlie, I said you may leave now. Further contact goes through counsel. She stood, said something about telling everyone, and found the exit with security a pace behind. Brendan followed torn, muttering that he would call later. The lobby camera watched them go. Cameras don't clap. They simply remember. Kira exhaled. I'll email you a memo summarizing today with lobby stills attached. Thank you, I said. Please include the time the courier arrived and the stamp you applied. Back at my desk, I watched the inbox bloom. Kira's email arrived with a PDF memo unscheduled, visit HR response. 2 stills from the lobby camera showed the courier's envelope landing and security walking Darlie out. I replied with a short note and a file tree from the USB so their records would mirror mine. Clean lines make clean days. On my way home, I stopped at the Naperville Police Department's non-emergency desk. The lobby there smelled faintly of paper and winter boots. I gave the clerk my driver's license and the HOA incident number, the workplace memo, and the cease and desist. This is not an emergency, I said. But it is a pattern. She nodded, typed, and handed me a printout. Incident no, followed by a string of numbers that looked like order. I slid the page into the Day 3 tab of my binder and thanked her for her time. Dusk found my porch the color of old copper. I made tea and sat where the roses could listen. The phone buzzed once with a text from Garrison HR memo received. Subpoenas to banks drafted for morning. I answered with a single word, good, and saved the attachments to the cloud folder that had become my scaffolding. Across the street, Martha brought in her mail and waved. The neighborhood breathed like a living thing, lawnmower, a dog telling a squirrel it had gone too far, the mercy of routine. I swept sand from the welcome mat and checked the deadbolt. Boundaries like gardens hold when tended. Brendan did call later, a voice full of soft weather. He asked if I was set on this. I told him I was set on the truth. Your choices are your own, I said. So are the consequences. If you want to speak, bring your counsel to the table. I will be at mine. Silence hung there, a clothesline with no wind, and then he said goodnight. I set a reminder for the morning confirm bank subpoenas served. Paper turns noise into timelines and timelines into outcomes. I washed the day's cup, turned off the porch light, and let the house settle around me like a well-made coat. Some doors open with keys. The next one opens with a subpoena. At 9 a.m., Garrison's courier left the clerk's office with bank subpoenas, still warm from the printer. The envelopes on our conference table were proof of service, not answers. Paper first, patience next. I let the ritual steady my hands. Garrison skimmed the stamps, nodded once, and called the title company. His voice was winter sunlight, cool, unobstructed. While he waited on hold, he turned his monitor so I could see my binder's index. We'll start with what we can get today, he said. The rest will follow the subpoena's clock. The disbursement sheet arrived while the call was still warm. A PDF bloomed in his inbox. The closing date, the file number, the line that mattered, $850, $1,000 wired to the joint account Brendan held with Darley. I felt a tug in my chest that wasn't grief so much as gravity. Numbers fall where they must. Forward that to me, Garrison told the escrow officer. Then he muted, turned to me. If Brendan will cooperate, we can examine the first week without waiting on the banks. I texted my son. No accusations, just a request. Please email Mr. Cole the last 2 months of statements and the wire confirmation from closing. Do not delete anything. The dots flickered, died, returned. 10 minutes later, 2 PDFs and a mobile wire receipt hit Garrison's inbox subject line. Plain, you asked for these. We enlarged the first page. The deposit posted the morning after closing $850,000 in a neat sans serif. Then the outflow ledger lifted its quiet voice. A $300,000 wire left that afternoon memo, Artemis Atelier LLC, $80,000 in credit card payoffs, $52,000 to a jeweler in Oak Brook, $12,000 to a wellness retreat in Michigan, $18,000 labeled auto interior. Garrison uncapped his highlighter. Yellow halos formed around dates times numbers. First 72 hours, he said. Pattern rapid extraction. He cross-checked merchant category codes against a reference sheet tapping the desk when one confirmed personal services. Facts don't care who films. We opened the wire confirmation. Artemis Atelier appeared in the memo, but the destination routing landed in a personal checking account under a nickname I'd seen in Darley's comments online, her friend who sold handbags after brunch. No EN, no business account suffix. Seed capital the memo added with the lie of a ribbon on an empty box. I didn't speak. It is a strange thing watching proof become visible. You can miss your child and still refuse to miss the truth. Garrison photographed the screen, then saved the PDFs to an evidence folder labeled with the case caption and today's date. A knock at the door. Lorna Pratt stepped in, hairpin back bag over her shoulder. Garrison briefed her, confirmed the alias behind that personal account, pulled the state filing trail for Artemis Atelier check hotel receipts tied to the peer pay handles, and document the jeweler's sale with footage. She laid chain of custody forms beside my binder. I signed where she pointed the loop of my name steady, while Lorna scanned Garrison, drafted a demand to the title insurer and escrow agent. My recorded lien had not been satisfied at closing their disbursement sheet, proved it, and under the policy they must cure or cover. He dated the letter, added recipients. Escrow insurer, the closing attorney, the branch manager. This goes certified today, he said. We start the clock. I called Brendan on speaker. I need you to preserve your messages and emails, I said. Authorize release when counsel requests it. Paper rustled on his end. I didn't know about the 300 he whispered. I thought it was for the shop. My mouth ached around a softer answer. Numbers tell you what a story won't. By early afternoon, I was home at my dining table, my war desk. The good tablecloth stayed in the drawer. The wood deserved the weight of truth. I built Exhibit D, a page with arrows tracing the flow title company to joint account to the boutique that wasn't card payoffs, merchant codes. The doorbell chimed and went ignored. I saved the file and printed 2 copies, one for the binder, one for the envelope marked clerk. Then a line item snagged me $11,400 to Hawthorne Construction, same day as the spa charge. Not a roof, not a fence, not a permit number in the memo, just retainer. I circled it twice and wrote the date in the margin. Suspicion is not proof, but it is a flashlight. I texted Lorna the screenshot. She replied inside a minute on it. Another minute and a second text arrived. Hawthorne's owner drives a black Mercedes. He has a hotel membership. The billing address matches a property near the lake. I set my pen down. The room was as quiet as an after-storm street. I thought of the $40,000 check I had written years ago, its promise notarized, to keep everyone honest when one day nobody would be. I had hoped never to need the stamp. Tonight it felt like a small, square hand on my shoulder saying, "Keep going." Outside, a leaf skittered along the walk and tapped the step. Inside, the printer cooled the light on the router, pulsed the binder closed with a careful thud. I opened my calendar and blocked tomorrow morning for a call with Garrison and Lorna. Bank responses will take time, but we already have a road. Numbers don't pick sides, so when one of them spelled Hawthorne, I knew the story was about to stop pretending. Lorna slid hotel folios across the table, his initials, her signature, and a room number that matched the wire date. The paper smelt faintly of citrus cleaner and old coffee. I kept my hands flat and steady while Garrison angled a desk lamp so the embossing caught the light. The folios were from an Oak Brook hotel I knew by its lobby fountain. R. Hawthorne, the header, read with a last 4 card number that didn't belong to my son. On a second folio, Darlie had signed for incidentals with the same flourish she used on birthday cards. Dates lined up like fence posts, the $300 to $1,000 wire on Wednesday, jewelry on Friday, dinner, valet, and a sweet charge in between. Lorna laid down stills from the valet camera, black Mercedes nosed in, under the awning license plate cropped but readable enough. A valet stub scanned and time-stamped matched the folio's midnight check-in. Pulled with permission from the property, she said. Chain of custody forms sat beside her phone. She filled them as if she were measuring flour. Why the fire sale, I asked softly, if money was so abundant? Because it wasn't. Lorna said. Marianne Hawthorne cut him off last week. Corporate card pulled. She confronted him after a text showed up on her family plan. The boutique story replaced the money. Garrison's pen paused. So the pressure moves to Brendan, he said, not as a question. I thought of my boy's tie askew on my porch and swallowed a sentence that would have tried to fix him. We shifted to next steps. Garrison drafted an amended complaint, adding fraud and conversion, his keyboard patient and relentless. He dictated a preservation notice for phones and cloud accounts. No deletion, no factory resets, no oops. The printer coughed out letterhead and a clerk's name. Lorna photographed every page a metronome of shutters. My phone buzzed. Brendan. I answered on speaker with Garrison in the room. I saw a picture, he whispered. Paper rustled somewhere on his end. If you're happy now, I'm not, I said. I'm focused. Keep your texts, sign the release when it comes, and don't speak about the case to anyone but counsel. That includes Darlie. Silence stretched. Then a small, aching, okay, before the line clicked dead. Back home, I cleared my dining table. A runner, a bowl of Granny Smith's the day's mail. I built Exhibit D funds flow. First 72 hours arrowing the $850,000 deposit into outflows like tributaries. Valet charges shared a date with a jewelry receipt. Peer pay handles mirrored dinner times. The black Mercedes recurred like a watermark. A line item snagged my eye, $11,400 retainer to Hawthorne Construction on the same afternoon as the spa charge. I circled it twice and typed a note, retainer boutique inventory. My doorbell chimed. I let it ring out. The welcome mat remained a surface, not an invitation. Lorna forwarded a text thread she'd preserved with metadata intact. Darley to Arseed Capital, hitting by noon. Book us the suite, same view. A minute later, bring the keycard to the bar. I don't want the desk seeing us together. My stomach went cold, not hot. Numbers don't pick sides. Their timestamps don't flirt. Garrison called to review. We'll file the amendment, first thing he said. And I'm sending demand to title and escrow for failure to clear your recorded lien at closing. They either cure or cover. Send it, I said, and meant all the way through. The email arrived while we spoke. Subject, I think we share a problem, from Marianne Hawthorne. The body was formal and wounded in equal parts. She had texts, calendar entries, and was willing to sign a notarized statement. She asked for confidentiality because there were children. We did it right. On a brief call with Garrison present, we set terms: no public posting, counsel-to-counsel transfer, redactions for minors. Nothing beyond facts. Marianne agreed. A minute later, a PDF landed dinner selfies, time-stamped the same fountain I remembered from the lobby. Background Garrison said, enlarging a reflection in a mirror. Darley's hand hovered over a keycard laid on the bar, her eyes on the phone camera, not the card. That is not love, he said. That is intent on the record. I closed the PDF and sat very still. In my garden, the late roses would be opening toward the small October sun. Inside, the lamp hummed, and the stack of paper made its own weather on the table. I thought of all the times I had chosen quiet so my son could learn to hear his own conscience. I hadn't failed for being quiet. I had waited until the paper could speak. Garrison's assistant pinged with a calendar invite settlement conference set for tomorrow at noon. Darley's side had insisted on bringing a camera. Mine would bring a folder that didn't blink. I returned the RSVP and stood to stretch my back, aware of the years, and none the weaker for them. Before shutting down for the night, I labeled the new binder spine Affair Artifacts. I slid the hotel folios behind the tabs, the valet stub, the texts, the mirror shot. I checked the porch once more. The mat lay clean. Roses tossed a soft scent into the dark. Across the street, Martha's porch light clicked once like a neighbor's nod. I let the house breathe and came back to the table. Then I wrote the last line of my note to counsel and read it twice, tasting each word for weight. If a mirror caught her hand taking the key card, a courtroom could catch the rest. By noon, Garrison's assistant had us slotted for a settlement conference. Darley insisted on bringing a camera. I brought a folder that didn't blink. We checked in at the DuPage Judicial Center. Officer Ramirez wanded our bags and pointed to a laminated sign, "No recording in mediation suites." A bailiff handed each of us a blue lock pouch for our phones. The pouch thumped on the table like a small verdict. I breathed once slow and kept my hands flat. Retired Judge Alma Pierce, the mediator, opened with a steady voice. "This is confidential. We're here to find terms, not to feed a story." Opposing counsel Avery Klein framed it as a family misunderstanding and asked to dismiss my claims. Garrison answered with dates: the recorded lien, the sale, the front porch footage, the HOA report number, the HR memo, the non-emergency police incident. He did not raise his voice. He raised the record. We moved to exhibits numbers before pictures. Garrison slid a one-page timeline across the table: deposit from the title company, then the drain wires, cash advances, luxury spends, each date highlighted. Judge Pierce initialed the corner. Next came the Oak Brook Hotel folios, the valet stub, the last 4 digits that matched. I added a single still image, the mirror that caught her hand taking a key card off the bar. I didn't speak to it. The paper spoke. Brendan stared at the table. I didn't know he whispered, as if the wood could answer. Klein bristled. Character assassination. Judge Pierce tapped the wire page. "Where is the EIN for this boutique?" Transfer silence gathered like frost. The table shook. Darley slapped her palm down hard, then pushed back from her chair and stormed into the corridor. "He promised me the suite if the seed hit," she shouted. Doors opened along the hall. A CCTV dome looked down like an unblinking moon. Officer Ramirez stepped into view. The mediator did not chase her. She wrote a line in her log and waited for the echo to die. Back at the table, Judge Pierce noted the outburst for the caucus record and warned of sanctions if it continued. Garrison laid out terms as if measuring wood for a frame repayment of my recorded interest, a consent, no contact order preservation of all devices and cloud accounts. Klein asked for a brief recess. No one argued with the word brief. A knock at the door. The clerk's aide slid a printout to Klein and Garrison. Marianne Hawthorne's counsel had emailed a notarized affidavit with attached text threads. Dates and times matched the folios and the wire. The mediator read in silence, then set the packet down, the way one sets down a heavy pan carefully so nothing spills. I looked at my hands and kept them flat. Klein cleared his throat and asked for a continuance to protect privacy. Judge Pierce folded her palms. "You came for settlement," she said, "and you have brought gasoline. If there is no agreement today, I expect both sides to pursue appropriate protective orders. The corridor, however, is public. Choose rooms, not hallways." We gathered our folders. In the corridor, the sign about CCTV hung at eye level. Darlie hovered by a water fountain with her pouch in both hands, hissing through clenched teeth to no one I could see, "Wipe the cloud." Officer Ramirez took one step closer, just enough to cast a longer shadow. I did not lecture, plead, or preach. I lifted a finger and tapped the sign once. The sound was small and sufficient. At the civil clerk's window, a woman with a tidy bun and a name badge that read Dana Wu stapled forms and slid them under the glass. Garrison asked for a morning slot to consult on a no-contact order and subpoenas for corridor footage. Dana date-stamped our copies and wrote the room number in the corner. Paperwork can be a mercy. It does not ask you to win the room. It asks you to sign, to show up, to tell the truth again. We reviewed the stack right there on the hallway ledge. Petition for civil no-contact notice to preserve surveillance subpoena, ducis tecum. Dana highlighted the service section and circled the deadline. "Bring 2 copies and a USB," she said, practical as a metronome. Garrison tucked the packet into his briefcase with practiced care. He nodded toward the affidavit in my folder. Marianne's statement included screenshots with the tiny details that survive memory, the mirror in the hotel bar, catching a hand, a keycard angled in the frame, a caption about seed capital hitting. None of it needed my outrage. It needed a file stamp and a quiet room. Outside, autumn light sat clean on the courthouse steps. Brendan avoided my eyes as we walked. I let the silence hold what words could not, without tearing. At the bottom of the stairs, my phone buzzed inside its blue pouch. Lorna's text waited for release courthouse corridor cams retained. Public area not privileged. Garrison read it when we were outside the security zone, then nodded. "Subpoena in the morning," he said. We reached the lot where the maples cast long stripes across the hoods of parked cars. I thought of roses, of welcome mats, of a latch that had done its job, of numbers that didn't pick sides and cameras that didn't clap. I thought of the word I had chosen at my door, the one that had kept the hinge from giving way. Some days you swing a door open. Some days you let the latch be the sentence. If she wanted the corridor to be her stage, the cameras would do the clapping. By sunrise, the subpoena list was printed, and the clerk had reserved a hearing room with a microphone that didn't care who cried. I carried my folder the way other people might carry a purse, tucked against my ribs, every page a shield. The judge opened the session with a firm voice setting the scope. Motions for evidence preservation, a temporary no-contact order, and discovery scheduling. Counsel identified themselves, and phones went into silence. When Officer Ramirez walked the aisle collecting them into blue pouches, the thump as mine landed felt like a door shutting behind me. That was fine. I had no interest in broadcasting. I wanted a record, not a performance. Garrison's first step was the corridor itself. He laid out the map of the Judicial Center camera IDs, circled in red ink. The judge signed a subpoena ducis tecum directing the sheriff's office to preserve every frame from the meltdown 2 days earlier. 10 business days for the handoff chain of custody noted. The paper came back with the court stamp, and for the first time that morning, my shoulders lowered a fraction. If she wanted the hallway as her stage now, it would testify without her prompting. Next came the sting. A letter from my firm's HR director, date stamp, describing the day Darlie stormed into our lobby. Visitor log receptionist's note security guard's memo, entered into the record for the narrow purpose of showing pattern. My cheeks warmed even though I hadn't raised my voice that day. To sit in court and hear your own workplace dragged into the fray that was its own humiliation. Still, the sting passed as quickly as it came. The judge nodded once and moved on. Temporary orders read aloud. No calls, no texts, no posts, no doorstep drop-bys. 100-yard buffer. Any shared cloud credentials surrendered immediately. The words carried the weight of iron gates, and though it wasn't celebration, I felt the relief of air clearing after a storm, dignity restored by distance. During recess, my phone vibrated in Garrison's pocket, Lorna, forwarding a platform notice. The anonymous smear post that popped up overnight was already gone. The IP matched Darlie's device back up the hash logged. A preservation letter was acknowledged by the platform, proof tied not to whispers, but to her own device. Vindication doesn't need applause. It just needs to be time-stamped. In the hallway, Brendan paused near the vending machines. "Thanks for not making a speech," he murmured. I told him what I've been telling him all along, keep his backups safe, and attend the financial literacy session Garrison offered. He nodded, eyes finally meeting mine. No promises, no tears, just contact like a bridge built plank by plank. Back inside, another thread tightened. An email from the title insurer, claim opened, escrow cure review underway. They wanted my promissory note recording receipt, chain of title paperwork. The implication clear: if closing failed to satisfy my lien sellers, might face indemnity. That letter didn't accuse me. It protected me. Vindication arrived in corporate letterhead, not slogans. By afternoon, the state's attorney's office acknowledged receipt of my packet. Intake file opened. Police report, HOA incident HR letter hotel folios, affidavit all collated. No charging decision yet, the intake officer said, but the phrase file opened was enough. Not vengeance process. The judge wrapped it cleanly return date. Set for the no-contact order status conference for subpoenas. Sanctions threatened for deletion. I let Garrison speak for me. My voice wasn't needed. Breathing was enough. Back home, my dining table became the war desk again. Folders labeled CCTV title HR ASA. I pinned a one-page timeline with a clothespin shaped like a house. Small symbols matter. They remind you what you're fighting for. As dusk settled, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. One sentence only. Look up. I stepped to the window. A black Mercedes idled at the curb, then slid away as quiet as a shadow. I noted the plate number in my ledger. If the courthouse kept its cameras, so did I. I wrote down the plate because numbers never forget. By dusk, Lorna had run the plate to a corporate lease. Garrison circled a new name, and my front doorbell rang like a dare. I didn't move fast. I let the doorbell camera do its job, recording every second. A man in a gray suit stood at the porch badge, swinging on a lanyard that read, Fleet Services. He slid a card under the mat and spoke loudly enough for the mic to catch call if the Mercedes is a nuisance. Polite words, but the subtext dripped. He didn't knock, didn't ask to come in, just left the card like a mark. I read the timestamp aloud for the camera, 6:12 p.m. I texted Lorna a photo of the card. Within minutes, she replied the corporate lease belonged to Hawthorne Construction's transport vendor. Garrison added a short note back. No contact order applies to agents acting for her. My pulse steadied. The camera had seen and the law would count it. Not long after Brendan pulled to the curb. He didn't come close to the porch, not after what the judge had said. He stood by his car holding a manila envelope like it might burn his fingers. His eyes were red but clear. "I need you to read this," he said. I nodded. He placed the envelope on the hood, stepped back and waited until I picked it up. He never crossed the threshold. Respect where there had been none before. It ached, but it was a cleaner ache than I'd felt in years. Inside the envelope were papers that weren't excuses, they were choices, an intent to separate. A draft debt repayment stipulation naming me first in line as creditor, a counseling referral attached. He had signed and he asked only for my initials on a receipt that I'd accepted the package. I signed, slid it back to him at arm's length, and the distance between us didn't feel quite so wide. That night, I called the HOA. Their administrator confirmed a street cam caught the Mercedes idling. Moments later, Mrs. Alvarez from across the way texted me her ring clip, the same suited man pacing. I uploaded both files to Garrison's secure link. Paper pixels, people stacked together. They built walls stronger than any words. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. I let voicemail take it. Darley's voice slithered through promising lawsuits if I didn't take down my lies. I saved the file, transcribed it, and filed it into the same folder. Not once did I reply. Silence, too, can be a statement. By morning, Garrison had fired back. An anti-SLAPP and defamation preemption letter exhibits attached litigation, privilege, cited spoliation warnings, underlined fees exposure spelled out, time-stamped and couriered. If she wanted to threaten court, she'd have to do it, knowing the cost would be hers to carry. Before bed, I texted Brendan a photo of the repayment schedule pinned under the clothespin shaped like a house. 1 page at a time, I wrote. His reply came short but certain, I'll be there. Thin hope, but real. Day 8 dawned cold and bright. By 7:30, I had bundled everything: the doorbell clip, the HOA email, Mrs. Alvarez's ring file, the voicemail MP3, the license plate note. I typed a 1-paragraph timeline with times and witnesses and slipped it into the binder. Order came from order. At Garrison's office, we logged the doorstep intimidation as a violation under the no-contact order agents count as arms. He prepared a motion to clarify the order's scope and marked the calendar for a hearing. Every move was deliberate, no drama wasted. Just before I left, the clerk pinged a hearing slot for that afternoon, the motion plus the insurer's first status call. I stood gathering my folder when the receptionist leaned close and whispered, "Ms. Haynes, she's here." He tilted his chin toward the glass front doors. Darley stood there, camera crew in tow. If she brought a camera to make a scene, the court had already reserved the room. Looking back, I've learned that strength doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from standing steady when the storm arrives at your own front door. Family, money, and pride can all collide, but what matters is protecting your dignity and choosing the truth even when it hurts. I share my story not just for myself, but for anyone who has felt overlooked, betrayed, or silenced. We can't control what others do, but we can decide how to answer with clarity, with proof, and with calm resolve. And now I'd love to hear from you. What lesson did this story leave you with? Do you believe silence can be as powerful as words? Drop a comment below if this story touched your heart type 1, or let me know where you're watching from. If it challenged you, tell me why, and share your own perspective. If you found meaning here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. Together, we're building a place where dignity is defended, wisdom is honored, and no one is ever too old to turn the page.